Hey there, Heather. Hello there. Jeff Cutter. Welcome you to quarterfinals action of both the 1981-82 and the 91-92 tourney to decide the two teams involved in the 16 season Tournament of Champions. Of course, I've done playoffs for the other 14 seasons prior to 82 and 92. The top two move on from each of the things and all that. There's no wild cards, no nothing. So anyhow, um, we're going to do the quarterfinals and all that. We're going to show you the bracket. So the Rangers, how did they get here? Well, the Rangers have gotten here via a preliminary round with the Red Wings in 5 and then the North Stars in 6. Edmonton got a bye into the second round against the Quebec Nordiques, took them out in 5. The Buffalo Sabres got a bye to the Sweet 16, beat Toronto in 6. Philly had to go through the preliminary round, beat Washington in 5, and then beat Chicago in 6 to face the Sabres now. The Bruins got to the Sweet 16, automatically beat Winnipeg in 4 straight. The Islanders had to go through preliminaries against both Colorado and, well, against Colorado and Montreal. They're 8 in donut. And the Vancouver Canucks also got a bye into the second round and took care of St. Louis in 5. And Pittsburgh also got a second round berth and beat Hartford in 4. So Vancouver and Pittsburgh are the only it's the only matchup of the quarterfinals that does not have anyone who had to go through the preliminaries. So anyway, we're down to 8 Edmonton Rangers. In 1982, the Edmonton Oilers were the class of the Campbell Conference. Well, kind of what we call the Western Conference now. And they were supposed to run through the Smythe division. This is the first season that the 1-4 format happened within the division. So you had to be top 4 in each division. Each division had 5 teams except for the Patrick, which had 6. So basically, your chances to make the playoffs are 80%. But you had some terrible point marks. Nevertheless, Edmonton was supposed to be good, but then they suffered through the miracle of Manchester. The New York Rangers got taken out in. What did the Islanders take out in 82? Was it the Islanders taking out the Rangers in 82 first round or second round? I don't know. But anyway, the Rangers fell to the Islanders. The Islanders in 1982 won their third straight Stanley Cup, becoming the first American team to do so. There were a few American teams that went back to back, but the Islanders were the first to go 3 in a row. They extended that to 4 the next season. But yeah, the 82 season, the Islanders, it was like a piece of cake. The Boston Bruins in 1982 looked like they were going to be solid in the Adams division and go to the conference finals against the New York Islanders, but they fell in Game 7 at home against the Nordiques. So we didn't see Islanders Boston in 1982. Pittsburgh versus Vancouver. Pittsburgh was crappy in 82. Did they make the playoffs in 82? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think they lost to the Islanders in the first round in 1982. Yeah, wasn't that the Game 5 goal, or was that 1981 when the Islanders were down against Pittsburgh? It was 82, I think. Pittsburgh had the Islanders on the ropes and couldn't do it. But yeah, it was first round. And then Vancouver in 82 made the big Campbell Conference move because they were the darlings. They took out Calgary and then they took on LA, who took out Edmonton, took out the Kings, and then took out the Blackhawks. They get to the Stanley Cup Finals and get easily swept by the Islanders. The Philadelphia Flyers in 1982, I don't know how they did in 82, I can't remember. Buffalo wasn't really that good in 82 either, so got 2 teams for nothing. Anyway, let's do the quarterfinals. First game was Edmonton crushing the Rangers 9-1. Steve Weeks got taken up by Grant Fuhr. One Ranger goal in there was Ron Duguay, his 8th. Gretzky. So Gretzky scored a first period hat trick. Pat Hughes scored, and then Pat Hughes scored 2 more goals. He went up Gretzky. He got a natural hat trick. Paul Coffey, Kitchener made it 7. Kevin Lowe and Moose Messier made it 9-1. Both the last 2 scores future Rangers. Boston beats the Islanders in overtime, handing the Islanders their first loss of the year. Rogie Vachon for Boston, former Kings icon goalie, against Billy Smith, who also was a former Kings goalie. Bet you didn't know that. Anyway, the Islanders were up 3-1 on goals by Denny Potvin, Clark Gillies, and Hector Marini, who would go on to the Devils the next year. Boston goals by Rick Middleton, and Taz O'Reilly. And then in overtime, on the power play with Bob Nystrom in the box, Keith Crowder scores from Milbury and Marcotte to make it 4-3. Yes, Mike Milbury was still around playing. Canucks beat the Penguins 4-3 in Game 1. King Richard Brodeur beat Gary Edwards. Vancouver goals by Kurt Fraser, Thomas Grandin, Lars Moline, and Stanley Smeal. Pittsburgh goes by Rick Kehoe, Paul Gardner, and Randy Carlisle, who the Leafs just basically gave away for nothing. And he won the Norris Trophy in 1984. That's right. And Buffalo beats Philly in game one 5-3 as Don Edwards. Kitchener beat Rick St. Croix. Philly goes by Brian Propp, Ron Flockhart, and Inga Salo. Buffalo goes by Gilles Perreault, Van Boxmeer, Tony McCagney, Mike Ramsey, who finally scored, and Dale McCourt. Game twos saw Boston now up 2-0 on the Islanders. Wow, 5-1. Vachon beat Smith. Mike Bossy scored for the Islanders, but Crowder, McNabb, Casper McNabb, and Mike Gillis scoring for Boston. Game two, Pittsburgh wins the split with Vancouver. Heinz Ketchup losing to Edwards. Vancouver goes by Gary Lupul. I think that's Jeffrey Lupul's father. But anyway, and Ivan Helinka, you know the Helinka Memorial Cup. Pittsburgh goes by Paul Gardner, Mike Bullard, not the comedian. Peter Lee, who was this hotshot Ottawa 67's OHL prospect. Better than Wayne Gretzky, they said. Yeah, right. Rick Kehoe and Paul Gardner again. Buffalo's now 2-0 on Philly, halfway home. Edwards beats St. Croix. Buffalo was actually, Buffalo was down 3-0. Buffalo was down 3-0. Philly had 3 goals. Sinisalo, and Holmgren, and then Buffalo scored 7 straight. Rod Sealing Buffalo scored 6 straight, sorry. Rod Sealing with 2 goals. Kitchener, Mike Foligno, J.F. Sauve, Alan Hallworth, and Andre Savard. And Edmonton wins on prolongation, so 3 of the 4 quarterfinals are at 2-0. Eddie Neal losing to Andy Moog. Ranger goals by Robbie Ftorek, Bird Beck, and Ron Duguay. Well, he scored to tie the game. Edmonton goes by Gretzky, Matty Hagman, Gretzky again. And in overtime, Gretzky finishing his hat trick from Lowen Siltanen. So Wayne Gretzky's on fire. 6 goals in 2 games against the Rangers. He had 4 in the first round. So it was like he's found his touch. The only 1-1 series sees Vancouver win 2 to go up 2-1. Brodeur beats Edwards again. Vancouver wins Helinka, Boldrieff, Gradin, and Helinka. Pittsburgh goes by Doug Shedden, Paul Gardner, and Greg Shepard, former Bruin. Philly beats Buffalo to keep themselves in. Pelle Lindbergh. He was playing for the 82 season? Well, anyway, he beats Paul Harrison. Philly goes by Cochran, Flockhart, Bobby Clark finally producing a goal when he needed to, and Brian Propp is 12. Buffalo goes by Craig Ramsey and Mike Foligno. Rangers beat Edmonton, so they're back in the series 7-2. Steve Weeks beats Grant Fuhr. Edmonton goes by Lumley and Gretzky. Well, Gretzky scored 7 times on them. But Ron Duguay, pair goals, Eddie Johnstone, Dave Silk, Johnstone again, Dave Maloney. I can't really say Kitchener because I don't know which D Maloney it was. And Mike Allison iced it. Islanders beat Boston, so there's no sweeps. 5-4. Rolly Melanson beats Marco Barron. Boston goes by Peterson, Middleton, O'Reilly, and Marcotte. Islander goes by Nystrom, Bourne, Bossy, Pussy. Game 4. Buffalo beats Philly. They're now 1 win away from the semis, 3-2. Don Edwards doing extravagant St. Croix. Goes by Sauve, Ron Sealing, Kitchener, and John Van Baxmeer. Philly goes by Cochran and Timmy Kerr. Rangers crushing Edmonton 7-5. So that's a 2-2. We go to a game 6 at bare minimum. Meal beats Fuhr. Edmonton goes by Glenn Anderson, Wayne Gretzky, Dave Hunter. Wayne Gretzky again, and Matty Hagman. So that's 9 for Gretzky in 4 games. But the Rangers win Maloney. Mike Rogers, then Johnstone, Rogers again, Talafis, Wallin. Who the hell is this Wallin guy? And Rogers got the hat trick to win the game. Boston is now 3-1 up. Wow, the others could be fucked up. Barron beats Smith, Ray Bork, Tom Fergus, Rick Middleton for Boston, Trotz for the others. Wow, this could be big. And Pittsburgh beats Vancouver to tie the series at 2. Ricci beats Brodeur. Who the hell is this Ricci guy? Vancouver goes by Smeal, Elderbeck, Curry, Boldrieff, and Fraser. Pittsburgh goes by Boutet, Simpson, Carlisle, Shepard, Ferguson, and Gardner. don't know who Pittsburgh's goalies are. Gary was Michel Dion and Nick Ricci. I wonder if he's related to Mike Ricci. I want to know. Tell me, baby girl, because I need to know. Yeah, he played 19 games, but does he have a connection to Mike Ricci? Allegedly not. Okay, never mind. We go to the playoffs. Okay, so Boston, do they win in five? Yes, they do. And the Islanders are out. The Bruins sink the 82 champs in real life. Vashon takes down Smith. Islander goes by Nystrom, Gillies, and Goring. Boston goes by Krusheletsky, Barry Pedersen, Rick Middleton again, and Keith Crowder. So the Islanders fell flat. Billy Smith 5-4. Rolly Melanson 4-0. Should have given Melanson more time. They had to go through the preliminary round. They swept Colorado. They swept Montreal and couldn't do it against the Bruins. It's like, what the fuck? Mike Bossy with 24 points. Great player, but the team just sucked. Buffalo, do they win in five? No, Philly says not today. Harrison loses to Peters. Philly goes by Prop, Hoffmeyer, Holmgren, Lindstrom, and Ray Allison. Buffalo goes by Craig Ramsey, Yvonne Lambert, Brett Peterson, and Andre Savard. Edmonton crushes the Rangers 9-3. Lowell beats Weeks. Ranger goes by Maloney, Johnstone, and Vickers. Edmonton goes by Anderson, Silton, and Messier. Gary Unger. Oh, yeah, that's right, because Unger took that 5-minute penalty and the Miracle, not not the Miracle in Manchester. Lumley, Rooston, Messier, Lumley, Anderson. Gretzky scored no goals in this game, and yet they still won 9-3. They didn't need Gretzky score after all. Pittsburgh shuts out Vancouver. Marcel Dion takes down Marcel. Yeah, that's right. No, it's Michel Dion. Excuse me. Beats Brodeur. I knew that sounded wrong. Bullard, Shedden, and Gardner. So now, Edmonton, do they take out the Rangers? No, they don't. Rangers win 3-2. Meal beats Low. 6 letters combined. Ranger goes by Johnstone, Rogers, Edmonton, Gretzky, and Messier. So we got a game 7 in Edmonton. Pittsburgh beats Vancouver. They're going to the semifinals. Dion beats Brodeur. Vancouver goes by Helinka and McCarthy. Paul Gardner, Ron Stackhouse, and Rick McLeish scoring for Pittsburgh. Yeah, it's weird seeing Rick McLeish in a Pittsburgh outfit. Vancouver, King Richard 6-3. Rick Hines 0-2. Yeah, they lost Glenn Hanlon. So 5 games against St. Louis, and then Pittsburgh taking Linkco with 11 points. And Buffalo beats Philly. They're in the semifinals. Pelly Lindbergh couldn't beat Don Edwards. Philly goes by Holmgren. Daryl Siller finally scored a goal. Like, fuck, did you lose your touch after being traded to the Leafs? Reggie Leach and Joe Watson. Buffalo goes by Lambert, Foligno, Savard, Hallworth, and J.F. Sauvé. So we know 3 of the final 4. Now the question on everyone's lips will be, who will be the 4th one? We might as well. All right, Rangers Edmonton, Game 7. Eddie Meal and Grant Fuhr are going toe to toe. Meal's the backup to Steve Weeks. John Davidson, I guess he didn't play much. Ron Van Beesbrook and Steve Baker. Okay. Edmonton's goalies Grant Fuhr, Ron Lowe, and Andy Moog. So Meal versus Fuhr. Rangers, big names Ron Duguay, Mike Rogers, Mark Pavlich, part of the American Ice Team, Eddie Johnstone, Don Maloney. Anyway, yeah. Rudenstein, Dave Silk, another member of the American Ice Team, Pat Hickey, Dave Maloney, Kitchener. He's the Kitchener guy. Mikko Lainen, who once scored 7 points in a playoff game. Or was it? No, sorry, 6 assists in one game in 1982. Barry Beck, great defenseman. Stevie Vickers, Robbie Fatorik with that big helmet on him. Nick Vitu, Mike Allison, Ryan Grashner, Rob McClanahan for the American Ice Team, Carol Fadney still around, Tom Laylaw still around, Ed Hospodar still around, Oil Drops, Gretzky, Messier, Anderson, Curry, Coffee, Kitchener, Hughes, Marty Hagman, Dave Hunter, Siltonen, Semenko, Kevin Lowe, Gary Unger, still around, Lee Fogelin Jr., Charlie Huddy, Laurie Boschman, Mark Hopshot. Weird names by all. 2 minutes into the game, Ritter scores. Jacob 4-2. Well, Fatu, but 4-2. His second from Layla and Rogers. 3 minutes later, what's a penalty? And Semenko whacks Vandy. Rangers chance to make it 2-0, but they kill on Dugay and Maloney. Later on, aggression. It's Moose for 2. Rangers take a chance, living no. And they kill the zone on Rogers. 5 minutes later, it's Mel Riviere. Rangers take skill, Papa Power goal. Kitchener. Dave Maloney, his fourth from Dory and Fedorek. Makes it 2-0. And the Rangers, could they pull off a massive upset? We know it is Philadelphia. We know it's Buffalo. We know it's Pittsburgh, and we know it's Boston. The Rangers could make it a Wales Conference 4-pack. 5 minutes into the period, and Lumley gets whacked by Hospodar. Is this the turning point? Yeah, maybe Steelers. Papa goal. Mr. Anderson. His fourth from Callahan and Coffey. 4 minutes later. It's Steelers. That's the great line. What do you expect from Lumley and Della Riviere? His 11th in the 7-game series against the Rangers. He had 4 before this series. Now he has 11. 4 minutes later. It's Steelers. A goal by the coffee table. And as they say in a certain southern Ontario town, Kitchener! Coffee has third from Siltanen. I know you guys are going to be like, Paul Coffey never played for the Kitchener Rangers. Well, screw you. I'm going to tell you that and give you a peanuts thing. Dun, 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 dun. It's a roll. Like, yeah, right. What are you doing? You're full of shit, Jeff. There. See, right there. I am highlighting this. Does that not say 1979-80 Kitchener Rangers OMJHL? Of course, the prelude to the OHL, which changed things in 1981. That is a Kitchener Ranger. If I ever saw one, I wouldn't lie. 4 minutes later. Oh, the BSU crowd is pissed off. Oh, yeah, they're always pissed off. Shut up, Cutter. Anyway, Coffee, his second of the night from Hughes and Foglin. Kitchener. Battle action. Smooth as silk, his sixth on the breakaway from Don Maloney. And it's 4-3. This game could be epic. All high scoring in the 80s. House of Priest. Throw your hats onto the ice and make it, or throw them down a map into Kitchener, because Paul Coffey scored a hat trick. How many Kitchener Rangers could be capable of a hat trick? Maybe Bill Barber, or even Derek Roy or Mike Richards. But Paul Coffey puts a hat trick and Meals out of the game. They're going to put John Van Beesbrook in net. Put the future in. 4 minutes later. Somebody get low. His second from Ken Berry and Moose Messier. This game is practically over. But not for long. Mikko Laininen, he scores from Rogers and Dugay. 6-4. This game's not over yet. 2 minutes later. They score! Dugay, his 12 from Beck and Rogers. Are you for real? It's 6-5. Now comes the empty nets. And the Rangers tried, and they failed to tie it. It was so close. They were down 6-3, but they didn't give up. Edmonton kind of let up a little bit. The Rangers almost survive, but the Oilers win 6-5. Paul Coffey, your hero. Well, actually, Kevin Lowe's the hero because he scored the winning goal by Paul Coffey with a hat trick. Gretzky with another goal. And the funny thing is, Gretzky didn't even have another point. Gretzky only had 1 point in that game. 6-5. It was oh so close. Van Beesbrook is kind of the goat, I think, because he gave up the 6th goal. But yeah, that's it for the Rangers. Steve Weeks 6-4. Eddie Meal 4-2. Steve Baker 1-1. Van Beesbrook played 1 game. I'm surprised that John Davidson didn't get a chance. Anyway, Mike Rogers scored 26 points. Ron Duguay 24. Mark Pavlich 17. If you must know. So we are down to the final 4. We're down to Pittsburgh, Boston, Edmonton, Buffalo. So that's the matchups you'll see. Pittsburgh and Boston, the team with the yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. And the Oilers drop against Buffalo. Ironically, the same team as Gretzky's 77th goal to break Phil Esposito's record. It was against the Sabres. Now the Sabres by revenge. But the Sabres have a little bit of edge with me because they have a Kitchener Rangers who go, oh, my name is Don freaking Everts. I don't think Pittsburgh and Boston have a former Kitchener Ranger. I know Edmonton does with Paul Coffey. I don't think so. Boston. Nope. Boston doesn't. Buffalo, I know, does with Don Edwards and Rick Seeley. I remember that. Pittsburgh, do they have a former Kitchener Ranger? Anderson Laurent. I guess not. No, sir. Well, that's it. Pittsburgh versus Boston, Edmonton versus Buffalo. So Edmonton, they went to the Sweet 16. They took out Quebec in 5. They had to fight with the Rangers. Now they got Buffalo, who, by the way, took out Toronto and Philly in 6 in the 2 playoff rounds. Boston and Pittsburgh, of course, black and yellow. Boston took care of Winnipeg in 4 and the Islanders in 5. A little too easy. I mean, the Islanders, that was a little too easy. And Pittsburgh took out Hartford in 4 and Vancouver in 6. So that's what we see. Now let's switch over to 91-92. Pittsburgh in the quarterfinals, just like 82. The Rangers in the quarterfinals, just like 82. Vancouver, just like 82. And that's it. 3 of the 8 teams during the 82-92 quarterfinal shuffle. Well, there were 6 preliminary round games. Calgary, they didn't have to do it, but they shocked the Islanders in 7 games. This is 92 season, so shocking the Islanders doesn't really matter because the Islanders were really crappy. So the Flames, without Doug Gilmour, make it to the quarterfinals. They face Mario Lemieux and the Pittsburgh Penguins, who actually beat Chicago, and it was random. It was totally random. Pittsburgh beat Chicago in 7 in the preliminary rounds. They actually reverse swept Chicago, and then they took care of St. Louis in 6. They took care of Ed Belfour and Brett Hull. Calgary doesn't really have that big name. Well, Al McInnes, Kitchener. Montreal, they got through to. They skipped the preliminaries and swept the Leafs, who were not the Leafs of the 93 season. If it was 93, then it would be better. And then Winnipeg, they also entered in the Sweet 16. Washington took them to Game 7, but Winnipeg won. So buyer beware. All Canadian matchup. Detroit Rangers. Detroit had to go to the preliminary rounds, took care of Hartford in 6, and swept the expansion San Jose Sharks, who got a bit of a bye. The Rangers, they didn't have to go to the preliminaries. They took out Buffalo in 5, President's Trophy winner. Yeah, Pittsburgh winning the Stanley Cup in 92. They made a massive trade, getting rid of Mark Recchi for Rick Tocchet and for the one of Ken Reagan. Calgary got rid of Doug Gilmour. Montreal in 92. Patrick Roy looked good. They took out Hartford in Game 7 of the first round. Couldn't get the momentum against Boston. And then Montreal. Yeah, and then Pat Burns left Montreal for Toronto. Winnipeg, they were up 3-1 on the Canucks in the 92 playoffs and then choked. All that. They actually were up 3-1 on Washington and nearly choked. Detroit, 92 in real life, they actually got past the Minnesota North Stars, coming back from 3-1 down. Famously, Game 6, Sergei Fedorov's puck went under the crossbar. They had to go to the video review, and it went in. And then the Red Wings won Game 7 at home against the North Stars. The Rangers, President's Cup President's Trophy winners, best regular season record, fell to Pittsburgh in the second round thanks to Ron Francis's 50-foot slap shot. And then LA Vancouver. LA got through to the Sweet 16, beat New Jersey in 6. Vancouver had to go to the prelims, shocked Boston in 5, and took care of Quebec in 5. I think LA and Vancouver, no, they didn't meet. LA met Edmonton in the 92 playoffs and fell, as Gretzky got beaten by Edmonton again. And Vancouver um, took care of Winnipeg, coming from a 3-1 deficit, and then the others swept them. All right, so here we go. Here are the quarterfinals. Game 1, Calgary wins on the Progressiana in Pittsburgh. Mike Ferdin beats Wendell Young. Kitchener, look that up, people. Overtime heroics by Gary Roberts is 7 from Joe Otto. Pittsburgh goals by Kevin Stevens, Mario Lemieux, Rick Tocchet, and Bob Erie. Calgary goes by Robert Reichel, Al McInnes, Kitchener, Ronnie Stern, and Phil Fleury. Detroit goes to the Ranger, New York, and wins 6-4. Shovelday beats Richter. Ranger goes by Agroniak, Chris King, Adam Graves, and Jan Eriksson. Detroit goes by Jimmy Carson, the malcontent, as well. Steve Yzerman, Paul Ysbert, Brett Fedek, and future Rangers head coach Gerard Gallant. Fuck, I hate that guy. Vancouver shuts out LA in game 1 on home turf. McLean beat Chris Gouvard. Really? Cordo, Bury, Ronnie. Bury with 2 goals. This was Bury's rookie campaign. Winnipeg, Montreal. And Winnipeg, Gagne, Trois. Red Light Rasico was in net. That's why Montreal lost. Stanford Beauregard won the game. Winnipeg goes by Olson, Eagles, and Elenek. Montreal goal by Mike Keane. And look at Winnipeg. Is Teemu Selanne on this team? No. Teemu Selanne did not play for the 92 team. I know a lot of people probably thought he did, but he didn't. Game 2's Detroit shuts out the Rangers. They're now halfway home. Shovelday beats Van Beesbrook, Ysbert, and Fedorov with 3 goals. Vancouver shuts out LA 6-0. Kirk McLean with yet another shutout. Steve Weeks in there. Well, that's weird because Steve Weeks was the goalie for one of the goalies for the Rangers in the 82 thing. But anyway, Vancouver shutout Corno, Didick, Bure, Lume, Linden, and Babbage for the goals. Montreal beats Winnipeg in a shutout 2-0. Waugh gets a shutout over Essenside. Russ Corno and Denny Savard. Yeah, too little too late for Montreal to have Denny Savard be effective. And Pittsburgh beats Calgary. That series is 1-1. Barrasso beats Vernon. Calgary goes by Hapshod, Gary Roberts, and Michel Petit. Pittsburgh goes by Yager, Mullen. All right. Vancouver leads 2-0, and they win game 3, 3-1. As McLean beats Weeks. Courtney Linden and Ronnie scoring. Luke Robitaille at 9:45 of the third period. Can you imagine that Kirk McLean almost went 3 straight games, 180 minutes without letting in a goal? He was short. It was 169 minutes and 45 seconds before LA finally scored a goal in the series. Really. Montreal wins in overtime on home ice. Rolly Melanson in the net against Caparacci. Montreal was up 2-0. Stefan LeBeau pair. Mike Eagles, and finally Thomas Dean showing why he's a Winnipeg icon. And then Moeller from Gilchrist and Kitchener's own Gilbert Dion. I try not to say Kitchener when I say someone his name. Calgary beats Pittsburgh. They're now up 2-1. Barrasso losing to Kidd. Pittsburgh goes by Lemieux, Francis, and Larry Murphy. Calgary goes by Sutter, Newendike, Otto, and Reichel. And finally, Detroit is now 1 win away, 3-2. Shovelday beats Richter again. Ranger goes by Paul Broden and Joe Sorella. Not really goal scorers. Vladdy Konstantinov in his rookie campaign, and then 2 by Jimmy Carson, 3-2. So we have 2 potential sweeps. Vancouver, do they sweep? No, they don't. They lose in overtime. They're actually down 5-2. LA goes by Donnelly, Larry Robinson, Kitchener, Dale Zador, Dave Taylor, and Rob Blake. Vancouver goes by Linden, Mamasso, and then in the third period, running Adams. They thought they were going to pull off a 3-goal comeback to a sweep. I know. Kudelski at 9:06 from Gretzky and Curry does his job, and the Canucks are now going to have to go home up 3-1. Detroit, they don't sweep. Rangers go to Detroit, win 3-2. Richter beat Shovelday. Ranger goes by Monte and Monte Messier. Monte would be a better known as a blue chip guy who has been moved to Chicago for Matteau and Noonan. Detroit goes by Yzerman, and finally Nick Lidstrom. He was also a rookie. Oh. Calgary beats Pittsburgh in overtime, so now they're up 3-1. So they're daring Pittsburgh to pull off another massive comeback. Wendell Young losing to Mike Vernon. Pittsburgh was up 6-4, but Reichel and Makarov scored late. And then Thomas Forsland, remember him? I don't. He scored at 5:28 from Sutter and McInnes. So Thomas Forsland doing his career. I had his card with the Flames. Winnipeg beats Montreal in overtime, so that series is 2-2. Essence beats Wa. He who lives by overtime dies by overtime. Montreal goals by Sherbrooke Dion, Kitchener, Matt Schneider, and Eric Desjardins. Winnipeg goals by Troy Murray for his hometown team, Darren Shannon and Murray again, and then Darren Shannon, known for his schoonery, but he scored his fourth goal from Phil Housley at 4:24 of overtime. Winnipeg, Montreal, we know they're going to game 6. And Winnipeg has a chance to send Montreal home 4-2. Beauregard beat Wa. Montreal goals by LeBeau and Paul DiPietro. Winnipeg goals by Olchek, Olenek, Olsen, and Elianek again. Calgary will eliminate Pittsburgh in overtime. 3 overtime wins for Calgary. Al McKinnis tied the game at 5. Kitchener, but in overtime. And then in overtime, Ronnie Stern, known for his schoonery, is third from Makarov and Reichel, and the Calgary Flames, with Jeff Reese being the hero. Pittsburgh was up 4-0. Stevens, Francis. Pittsburgh was up 4-0, and they couldn't get it done? Wow. So Calgary's in the semifinals. We have 2 Canadian teams. We may have 3. Well, Winnipeg, Montreal's a given. We have 2 Canadian teams in the semifinals. Can't believe it. Pittsburgh had to reverse sweep Chicago and took down St. Louis, but then Calgary took them down. Brazeau 4-5, Ken Reagan 3-2, Wendell Young, Kitchener 2-2. Lemieux 37 points, and he's not going to make it to the semifinals. Murphy 26, Mullen 20. Jamie Leach and Sean McCaffrey getting a point each. Oh, good for you. Detroit, do they take it out? They do. They take out the Rangers. The original 6 battle. Detroit wins. Chevalier, Richter, Carson, Fedorov, and Yeisberg. Turcotte and Messier for the Rangers. Too little, too late. Detroit is semi-bound. The Rangers falter. Richter was 3-4. Van Beachburg 2-1. They got past the preliminary round. They got the bye. They took down Buffalo in 5, but they got taken down in 5 themselves. Mark Messier 13 points. Was supposed to be the hero. Vancouver, can they make it 3 Canadian teams? They do indeed. It took overtime, but they did it. LA was up 4-2. Goals by Curry, Gretzky, McIntyre, and Gretzky. Gretzky finally remembered he's a goal scorer. Canucks goals by Cron, Linden, Ronnie, and Lehume. Then overtime with Peter Ahola in the box for boarding. Linden from Ferguson and Cliff Ronning. He beat Steve Weeks. Kirk McLean was in net for Vancouver. And the Canucks are in. And we have 3 Canadian teams in the Final Four because Winnipeg, Montreal is a given. We have a Canadian team. Calgary's in. Vancouver's in. Detroit's in. If Winnipeg wins, we have a Campbell Conference Final for nobody from the Whales. And Montreal wins on home ice 2-1. Wa beats Essensa. Shane Corson and Brett Gilchrist, your heroes. Winnipeg go by Darren Shannon. So Montreal and Winnipeg go to Game 7. And we will play Game 7. Why not? Game 7, Essensa and Wa going in the net. No Mellison, no Red Light Rasico for Montreal. Winnipeg doesn't want Taparachi, Beauregard, or Mike O'Neill in the net. Montreal, Kirk Moeller picked up from the Devils for Stefan Richer. That was kind of a weird trade, if you will. Denny Savard, Kitchener. Oh, why am I saying Denny Savard, Kitchener? It's Gilbert Dion. Denny Savard, who Montreal picked up a little too late. They could have had him first overall in 1980, but they chose Doug friggin' Wickenheiser. Nothing against Wickenheiser. He's a good player. Stephen LeBeau, Brad Gilchrist, Carbonneau on this team, Corson on this team, Mike Keane on this team, Sylvain Turgeon, that's Pierre Turgeon's brother, Matt Schneider, John Leclerc. Yes, he was a Montreal Canadian at one point. Everyone knows about his overtime heroics in 93, but people forget that he was a Canadian before then. I had his rookie card. Sadly, I don't think I have it. A John Leclerc rookie card with the Canadiens. Russ Cardinal, the hero in real life for Montreal in Game 7 against Peter Angelo. Desjardins around Paul DiPietro, 7 Lefebvre, still around Brian Screwland, who would be soon moved. Patrice Brisebois, Chris Nyland returned to Montreal. 92 Jets, Ed Ochek, Pat Helenek, Phil Housley, one of the best American defensemen of all time. Troy Murray coming back to his hometown team. Darren Shandon, Thomas Dean, the legend. Stu Barnes, Denton Cole, Teppel Newmanen, Mike Hartman, Keith Kachuk, a young Keith Kachuk, and Randy Carlisle. 4 minutes into the game. And it's yours! Super Mark Osborne, his second from Olszczuk and Housley. Much later. Montreal Skiers, Schneider's Hot Dogs, his second from Desjardins and McPhee. Hot Dogs, Schneider's Hot Dogs. 3 minutes later, aggression. And a chance for Montreal score. What a hit. And Mike McPhee. Danny McPhee, his second from Schneider and Gilchrist, makes it 2-1 Montreal. 4 minutes later, they had a chance and they failed. Last moments. Gilchrist, his fourth from Kirk Muller, and Montreal has a 3-1 lead and it looks pretty good to break up the Campbell Conference because they want a team from the other conference. Much later, Montreal takes a penalty and Danny Savard, of all people. The Steelers, power play. Darren Shannon from Olsen and WM. It's now 3-2. 4 minutes later, Montreal Steelers. There's Dennis Savard, the Spinorama. Spinner, spinner, round, 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 spinner. You spin me round, round, baby, round, round. There's a Savarian Spinorama, baby. From Russ Cornell. 2 minutes later, Montreal takes Rescuers. Kitchener. What's eating Gilbert Grape? No, what's eating Gilbert Dion? His four from Gilchrist and John LeClaire. And goodbye, Essensa. They're going to go with Beauregard in the nets. And yeah, Gilbert Dion is funny. He is actually Marcel Dion's kid brother, and he has a Stanley Cup, and Marcel doesn't. I have to laugh. 5 minutes later, and it's huge. Olsen from Osborne and Olszczuk. Makes it 5-3. Oh, don't give up yet. Montreal has a 5 lead. Will it hold up? Aggression? Aggression. It's Carlisle without the helmet. The skier, Papa Pablo Lebeau, his 7th. From Desjardins. Looks good for Montreal. The skier, running that from Olszczuk and Housley, Mr. 64. That's not Patrick Roy-esque. Giving up all those goals. Much later. Killing the clock. He's rattled. Get him, get him, get him. It's Turgeon, Sylvain Turgeon. Winnipeg Murray. Oh, that's again Murray again. Wow, that's why he's the best in the world. A coked up personality. And Montreal wins 6-4. Montreal is the only Wales Conference team in, and we have 3 Canadian teams in the Final Four. So we're guaranteed a Canadian team in the final, which means we're guaranteed a 92 Canadian team to be in the 16th season Tournament of Champions. Because top 2 move on. Simple as that. Montreal does their job. While Renaissance, I feel so bad for... Oh, yeah, Pittsburgh. Did we talk about Pittsburgh? Yes, we did. Did we talk about the Rangers? Yes, we did. Did we talk about Los Angeles? No, we didn't. Kelly Rudy 4-2. Steve Weeks 1-3. David Goverd 0-1. Why the hell did they not put Rudy in more nets? They took down the Devils before the Canucks got him. Luke Robitaille, Gretzky with only 10 points. And Winnipeg, we have to say goodbye to them. Bob Edson 2-5. Beauregard 5-1. Why the hell did they not put Beauregard in the net when they needed to? And Taparachi's loser. They rode Essence a little too much. They had to beat Washington 7, but they got beaten 7 themselves. Phil Housley with 16 points. So, well, I guess the schedule makers made this perfect. We have an original 6 semifinal, and we have a Western Canada semifinal. Detroit, Montreal, and Calgary, Vancouver will be your semifinal matchups. So Canada will be looking forward to this side of the coin, I think. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.